All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Irrational Competence Podcast. We're talking college football, and it is preseason top 10 time. It's number 10. 10. 10. She's 10. Guys, I'm joined by my co-host, the man who probably has seen Varsity Blues more than anyone else. Fresh, how you doing, buddy?
That's doing great. Varsity Blues is an American classic. If you haven't
It
seen it,
is.
please do it. If you're, there are many football movies, there are many sports movies that are great, but that movie tells the whole story that the other side of Friday Night Lights football that you see. It's a great American classic.
It is.
All right, we're in the top 10, and we're going 10 through 6 tonight in our preseason top 25. These are the teams, there are some significant expectations for each of these programs coming forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if we're taking a look at each of these programs, like it wouldn't shock me. I still think there's a little bit of a difference between our top 5 and like 6 through 10. But again, it's preseason time. We can sit here and say, like, Indiana, I believe last year was around 12 for us, 10, 12.
12, yeah.
Came out really, I don't want to say came out of nowhere, but we had questions about them. And again, Indiana answered all of the questions. Miami, I think we had them in the top 15 area. So both of those teams were teams that answered the questions throughout the year and really made a statement in the regular season.
Yeah, it's how the schedule plays out. And I think we need to start looking at college football in the playoff, like the NFL playoffs, where once you're in, anything can happen. And is a team like, you get the upset. So you're like, well, I got my draw is perfect. You're in, and the focus of every coaching staff, every recruit, every booster, you're in the playoff. And then from there is where the chips fall.
Right.
Back in the day, we knew coming into the season, you probably have 5 teams who were legit national championship contender, and either the rankings would deem that or 2 teams would play for the national title. Now it's the seed, it's how it's played out, the strategy. The we've seen teams who play that opening weekend at home or on the road are getting momentum, as opposed to teams who are, in most cases, getting that bye and playing New Year's Day or New Year's Eve. Where's that momentum thing? You see it in the NFL. Some teams, they get hot down the stretch and they get that wild card game, but they just keep carrying the torch. So, that rest versus success and versus, repetition, battle keeps going back and forth. And these teams, they're all going to be in that conversation. And it's just really, once you're in, the whole goal from now on should be getting in, and then you battle it from there and see what happens.
Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, our top 25 so far, going up to number 10, Virginia, Louisville, Arizona, Iowa, and Tennessee. That was 21 through 25 there. 20 was Houston, SMU, Penn State was at 18, Washington 17, USC 16. The Wolverines came in at number 15, Texas Tech, Ole Miss, Alabama, and BYU was number 11 there. If you haven't seen any of our previous episodes, make sure you go back. If you want to see how we do these things, you stumbled across this episode, you saw top 10, so you jumped in on this one. Fresh and I have been giving our actual ballots and then giving you the composite. So that does not mean who we picked in our ballots here, because our number 10 team, especially mine, is actually a team we've already talked about. You've talked about. You just have them a little bit higher rated than I do. But Fresh, who you got sitting at number 10 just on the outside looking in?
On the flip side, my number 10 is a team that you've already talked about in our 11 through 15. I have the Texas Tech Red Raiders. I know I'll dive into the whole quarterback saga here in a second, but this team is still very, very viable. That defense, the money they put into it, the returning players, the recruiting element. You look at, you bring in the arguably number 1 overall recruit in LaDainian Guyton from Savannah, Georgia. So obviously you paid up tons of money to get the 5-star edge rusher there. You go and have A.J. Holmes, Ben Roberts, Bryce Pollock. The defense has a lot of substance to it. You go in the transfer portal and get Trey White, Adam Trick, Mateen Igbra. The line of scrimmage depth is there, and that's how they're going to dominate the Big 12. That line of scrimmage rotation, that front 7 is going to be stacked. And that allows that secondary, led by Bryce Pollock, to really thrive. If the defense can stop people, if the offense can only put up 3, you win 3-0, you still win the ball game. And we look back in the past where there were times where teams had legit great defense. Like the Miami Hurricanes offense was good, but that defense, if you got a touchdown on them, you were putting that football in your own team's, Hall of Fame, because you scored on the Hurricanes there in the early 2000s, especially the 03 team. If you have a legit defense, it keeps you in the ball games and it'll let things happen. And if the ball bounces your way or offense can get a driver, get a turnover, it allows you to win. So Texas Tech's taking that mentality of, we're going to dominate on the defensive side of the ball. We're going to wear people down. The offense eventually would just find ways to score points and maybe gel as the season goes on. You look at the offensive side, Sheridan Wilson on the offensive line, big time transfer comes in. You have Terrence Carter Jr. at wide tight end. It's going to be a big matchup nightmare, especially on third down in the red zone. They have running backs return. You got some receivers there. You had Hudson coming back in the 5-star receiver a couple of years ago. You bring a transfer Malcolm Simmons from Auburn. They have talent, but it's all, as we all know, this entire offseason has been about the quarterback spot. Now, you dropped them a little bit. You had some hesitation around Brendan Sorsby. And honestly, I think they're better off with Hammond at quarterback than they were Sorsby. And this is, the whole laughing stock that they made of college football and the entire legal, proceedings, the NCAA, was this Brendan Sorsby betting scandal. The guy wasn't that good in the first place. He didn't start immediately at Indiana. He didn't even really get any much playing time. Goes to Cincinnati, he's, above average quarterback. Look at what he did versus a Matt Rule Nebraska team. Okay, the guy was not lights out. And we're spending all this money and all this hoopla around Brendan Sorsby. If the team is all good around and you put a decent quarterback in there, they'll find ways to win football games. Is Sorsby any different than Morton? No, Brandon Morton was average quarterback at best, and we saw what happened in the bowl game. You overpaid. You went to battle for somebody. You lost all the good grace the entire, master media had for you to be the counterculture team. And here you are. You're fighting through it. You eventually make the right. You stick your neck out for a kid, for a situation, for a cause that had no bearing whatsoever. When you had the better quarterback on the roster, the only thing really holding Hammond back is his health and how quickly does he get up to speed. If Hammond can get up, you have a decent running game. You allow yourself to the defense to thrive. As the season progresses, I think Hammond will get better and keep this team in the conversation. You look at this entire team, 8-5 in 2024, the loss to Colorado. It's not like this team has been building for a long time. They bought their team last year. They used their money wisely, and now they're trying to double down, if you will, pun intended, on the whole, we're going to bet on ourselves and move forward. Last year, in the 2025 regular season, you were 2-0 versus a ranked top 25 team. You finished 3-1 overall when you no-showed versus Oregon. And 2 of those 4 games were versus BYU. You didn't really have a meaty schedule. You just ran through everybody you could. You did what you had to. You stumbled yourself into a playoff game, and you got destroyed when it came up to be. The defense wasn't even that great. It was a battle. It wasn't really because of Morton playing great or not in that game either. The Oregon defense was really good, and the Texas Tech offensive line was average at best. You just couldn't get anything going. It was actually kind of a painful ball game to watch. Hammond's going to give them a little more mobility. If he can actually complete some passes and this team moves, they know where they are, where the parameter was set last year, what they have to improve on. Sorsby or not is not going to make that big of a difference. I think his team has a talent and they have a drive. Now, they have lost some of that goodwill from the American public because the whole betting and things standing for Sorsby and what's actually illegal and breaking the law and all that fun stuff. But this team has the talent on the full roster mentality aspect to navigate the schedule, put themselves in the playoff. I think they're very, very good. Top 10 team of my number 10 overall in the preseason. You look at the schedule. I know we talked about it a lot when you were doing it, but
right.
The back end of the schedule is where it's going to matter. And it gives Hammond some time early on to get comfortable and get in the offense, get healthy, feel his legs again, actually feel the flow of the football game. Yeah, it is Houston on September 18th. We talk about that. Win or lose, you can move past it. Because if you both have one loss or undefeated, you play again for the Big 12 title and move on from there. The real thing is you start October 17th, Arizona State. 24th, we're going to call it the Bet Bowl at Cincinnati. Can we sponsored by FanDuel or DraftKings from there? Arizona on Halloween, West Virginia the 7th, at Oklahoma State on November 14th, and then Baylor on November 21st. You look, and then TCU the 26th. That back end of the schedule actually has some tough opponents that are going to give them a test. And you're not going to sneak up on anybody. If the offense can build itself in the first few weeks, the defense maintains it, this team's going to handle the business and get through it. But they have to understand, once it gets in there, that everything is against them. They have ruined their own perspective, but they have to use it as a chip on their shoulder and play at a high level and take the opponent to task every single time. Play relentless defense, which they have the talent to do. If they do that, this team will win the Big 12 and be able to put themselves in their spot to make a playoff run.
Fresh. The only question and we'll go back to the TCU conversation because we did this quite a bit when I put TCU and I have them farther down on the list. Do you think, how big of a distraction is like the ripple effect of the Sorsby thing going to be for the Red Raiders? Because, right, he's been gone for about a month now. He's not going to be on the Red Raiders team. But the minute they open fall camp, anytime the reporters and the media gets a chance to talk to the players, like that Sorsby conversation is going to come up. Like they're going to have one heck of a like their PR person is going to be working overtime to get the kids ready to answer those type of questions. I wouldn't be shocked to see Joey McGuire have like a Mike Gundy moment where he just loses his mind and goes viral on an interview for this, but I don't know how big of a distraction that's going to be.
I think he's already lost. I think McGuire and the PR department have already become a laughing stock where everyone knows they're lying and they have no idea what they're doing because they were blatantly supporting some egregious stuff. They've already made a laughing stock. So the reporters are going to go off on them. I think they might just restrict all media availability the best they possibly can. But I see McGuire losing it. The Sorsby stuff will come like the Houston game if Hammond struggles.
Right.
But if Hammond comes out there, it doesn't matter who they play week one because if they're gonna roll, they're gonna roll. The Houston game will be the first true barometer and first true test of if Hammond can actually be serviceable and get the job done. It's early in the year. If he looks rough, he has a couple of early turnovers, then that's where everybody starts really coming after it. If he comes out there and puts on a show, we're like, okay, whatever. You guys actually were supporting the worst quarterback of those other two potentially. And don't give me this like, well, NFL draft, prospect rankings of Sorsby would be drafted and all this. There's a reason why, there's more busts in the NFL draft than there are success stories. And all these draft picks are like, oh, this guy's great and this guy's great and this other tools. Sorsby hasn't done nothing really at the college level to make himself worthy. It's all just a perspective. Now, I will say the reason why there wasn't a supplemental draft wasn't because he doesn't have skills. That was because the NFL has zero tolerance when it comes to betting. And they are not going to let somebody who's been betting on multiple sports and having this issue come in out of nowhere and join the NFL. That's them making a stand of the integrity, I'm using that word loosely, of the NFL. And we're going to make you wait a year and basically serve your penance, and then come back after it. The skills, I mean, we've seen Lamar Jackson was dropped to the bottom of the first round, and he is a million light years better than Brian Sorsby will ever be in his dreams. So the draft rankings of quarterbacks, he's a draft prospect, but he was not going to save or make Texas Tech be what it could potentially be. He's just a guy, and his job is basically be out of the way. Hand the ball up, make a couple of throws, let the defense do their job. But when it matters on third down, be there and be supportive of your teammates the rest of the way.
Yeah. All right, Fresh. My number 10 team, and this kind of pains me to say this, it's the Wolverines out of Ann Arbor. Last year they came into the season, Sharon Moore was the head coach, and it was the best possible thing if you're a Buckeye fan. If the message board rumors are true with what websites he was on during games or during half times, that stuff was getting pinged on, that's a whole other ball wax that you'll have to find on like an old like Jerry Springer show or something like that. That was the best case scenario for Ohio State fans. Like I used to tell people Rich Rod was the best thing to happen to Ohio State. And now we talk about the worst thing that could possibly happen to Ohio State is them hiring someone like Kyle Whittingham. And I really wish I could put on my Homer glasses, look at this whole lens and say how he's an overrated coach. He's never been any good. And that would be the furthest from the truth. There's too much record of me getting on here and talking about how much I respect Kyle Whittingham and how great of a head coach I think he is. The stuff he's done at Utah, and I think that me and you have had this conversation. I've had this conversation with a couple other people. The fact that he did all of those things at Utah, led them to Big 12 titles, led them to a Rose Bowl, led them to games where they looked really competitive. People would say, oh my gosh, Utah is, playing with this team or that team, and they're really, really good. Now you give him all of the resources of a Big Ten program. Now you give him all of the resources that they have in Ann Arbor. You give an alumni base that is insanely passionate about football. Not saying that the fine folk of Utah aren't extremely passionate about football, but it's a different level up there in Ann Arbor. It's a much different level, especially with the history of that program there as well. For me, I take a look at this Wolverines team. This entire season is going to come down to what Kyle Whittingham can do with Bryce Underwood. If really Bryce Underwood was not getting the best coaching in the world because of all the craziness and all the infighting that was going on behind the scenes over there with the Wolverines, and he can take 2 or 3 steps forward then the world needs to look out. Like, this Wolverines team could be a national title contender, as much as that pains me to say. If he doesn't progress, I would not be shocked. They're very high on this kid coming in. He's a legacy. Tommy Carr, the true freshman. I know a lot of people will be like, oh my gosh, like Kyle Whittingham wouldn't start a true freshman on this. But yeah, he would. I mean, he doesn't have any loyalty to Bryce Underwood. I mean, the only people that have loyalty is the alumni that footed his NIL deal. This is a great team at the skill position there. Andrew Marsh is back, sophomore wide receiver. He was really good. Jordan Marshall, that running back, is back. I'm a huge fan of Savion Hittner. I think he was going to be an amazing running back. I hate that he went up north. I really, really hate them for getting him. And then the other kid, the transfer, Jamie French from here in Jacksonville. I got to see this kid in high school with my own two eyes. It's one of those pictures. You saw him warming up with the wide receivers. Which of these things is not like the other? And you could see like the true D1 number one receiver. He's a top 5 wide receiver in the country when he came out. He's transferred up there out of from Texas. This team, if they can come together, they could be absolutely lethal on defense. And guess what? Kyle Whittingham has been a DC for a very long time under Urban Meyer. Utah's always had a great defense. I think he's going to take the talent that's still there in Ann Arbor and be able to get this defense to gel over time. I think it's going to take a little bit more time than most people think. Now, first test is going to be Oklahoma. Oklahoma's coming up there. They're going to want that feather in their cap, just like last year where they used the win against the Wolverines to kind of propel themselves into a playoff spot. That's going to be a barn burner of a game because you're going to see on the same day, you're going to see Oklahoma versus the Wolverines, and you're going to have Texas versus Ohio State later in the evening. But really, this schedule is really going to get tough when we get to the middle of November or middle of October. I feel like the last couple of years that the Wolverines have kind of skated by on their schedule. Penn State, Matt Campbell is not going to take down lightly. He's going to want a signature win. You got the defending national champs with Cignetti. Cignetti's going to want to get a win in the big house too. He's never gotten one there. Granted, yes, you get Rutgers after them, but Pat Fitzgerald is at Michigan State. Now again, he's got his work cut out for him, but you're not going to have a team that's going to roll over and die on you. Like, you're going to have to put the boots to Michigan State on that one. And then you got to travel all the way out to Eugene in the middle of November, UCLA, and then ending in Columbus with the game. That back half of the schedule is a murderous row. They got to only lose 2 games out of that. 3 games, I think they're out of the playoff, because if they've lost 3 games, most likely they lost that week 2 game to Oklahoma. If they're 9-3, they're a fringe playoff team. I don't think they want to do that and put that vote into the committee's hands, but this schedule is loaded. So they would have the benefit of the doubt of having that strength of schedule. I hate that Kyle Whittingham is there. I really do. This is one of the worst things that could ever happen to an Ohio State fan, but he's a heck of a coach. They got the right coach, and that man, this could be, I don't want to say maybe a start of a new 10-year war like Bo and Woody, but I could see this being a very neck-and-neck rivalry now between Ryan Day and Kyle Whittingham.
First off, I just want to say, how weird is it to hear and say reigning national champion Indiana Hoosiers?
It is. It's very weird.
When you
to
were
say,
listening to the schedule, like to get the national champions, and I was like, no, he said Indiana. That's not.
Yeah,
that's right. It's still going to take a long time for everybody. But yes, this team, I know I talked about I'm a little bit lower, but the leadership at top is what's going to get Michigan back. If the guys, they did not look very athletic last year on either side of the ball. If they can get them playing at a faster level, a little more organized, drama around the Ward Manual situation still surrounding the entire program. That's another clown show in itself. Lack of institutional control.
Mm-hmm.
But, you kind of look at what Whittingham's going to bring. He's going to bring a guiding light, a toughness. I think a little more maturity than Jim Harbaugh, because Jim Harbaugh was also kind of clownish at the same time with the gloves on and everything. But in the end, this Michigan team will play hard, and they are going to be challenging for a playoff spot when it's all said and done.
All right, Fresh, who you got in number 9?
Speaking of clown shows, LSU Tigers and Lane Kiffin. There's tons of talent there in the Bayou, but right now it's all about just living up to that expectation and delivering. Sam Levitt at quarterback. Jordan Seton, Prince, Maniela, who's right now being sued by Ole Miss along with another teammate. 44 transfers in total coming in. This is a total facelift of the Brian Kelly era there in Baton Rouge. And Weeks there, linebacker, who is a gamer. He is a typical, if you built a linebacker like back in the day, like a Boz, he was just a tackling
Hmm.
machine. He's going to be all around the field. A good leader for the Tigers. They need him to have his mind clear, and keep the team on pace. But how quickly does this team gel? Yes, they had Clemson early. La Tech. We're going to know in the first 4 games what the team's all about. Are they all about Lane Kiffin? Are they actually going to show up and play for each other? And will Lane Kiffin actually be for the first time in his life, actually get out of the way and let it be about the
Mm.
players and not about himself? I think that's the one thing. He let the Ole Miss situation be about himself. He's let Tennessee be about himself. He let USC be about himself. He let the Raiders be about himself. He even tried to make Alabama about himself when he was there working for Nick Saban. If he can get out of the way, the talent will gel. But that first 4 games of Clemson, La Tech, but at Ole Miss and the energy and the environment and the drama there, and then playing A&M the week after that, there's no room for slip ups or slow starts. They've got to be able to get after it and get on the move. There's talk right now of like, well, if LSU's not playing for a national title based on all the drama and all the stuff that's going on, the season's a failure. I wouldn't say that. You look at 2019, they won the Natty. That team, that LSU squad were legit. They were nasty. They were good. Since then, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, they've been average. If this team makes the playoff, that's a successful first year for Lane Kiffin because Lane Kiffin technically still has not coached in the playoff. He has to keep them organized. That's what I say. Get out of the way. Let the talent, let your assistant coaches, let Ed Orgeron do all the yah stuff, do the media stuff. You just call offensive plays, put points on the board, let Coach O be your exterior force, if you will, and drive home that change. You retain the same defensive coordinator. The defense is another year under Weeks there as the leader of that middle linebacker spot, building around it and taking it forward. But you have to win and make the playoffs. If you don't make the playoffs, there's going to be a lot of pitchforks coming because they did all this and went through all this drama for instant success. I'm not saying immediate, but that 3 years, you've got to be playing for a national title. And year one, you got to be in the playoffs for considering all the drama that's gone down. So, Lane, if you could just get out of the way, there's talent on this team. We've seen Sam Levitt do it at his own state. We've seen Jordan Seaton handle some of the expectations, actually play well at Colorado considering the terrible rest of the roster they had there. The one thing I will say from Seaton's perspective, playing at Colorado and now playing in the SEC, we're going to find out if he's really worth that 5-star, top 10 overall recruit when he went to Colorado for the bag and played for Dion. Can you live up and be an NFL
Mm.
tackle against the SEC and any other schedule that might come their way? So these guys, there's a lot of talent on the field. Can they gel? Can they get it done? Live up to expectation? On paper, very, very good football team. But in reality, Lane Kiffin's still at charge. And the one thing I think we're also going to see, the middle of the schedule is easy. You can get through the first 4 games, sort of level set, learn on some things, maybe get some players in better positions, guys develop the system. It's also, can Lane Kiffin and LSU Tigers finish? You have Bama, Texas, Tennessee, and Arkansas. This schedule is no favors, but we're going to know what kind of coach Lane Kiffin is. And if he gets out of the way, I think to be able to navigate this at 10-2 and make a playoff.
Listen, you know where I think about LSU with this. I mean, there's talent, like you said, talent there, but again, prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. I'll believe in you when you can because I've seen too much average football from highly average players at LSU. So when they prove me wrong, so be it. But yeah, I'm waiting for that to happen. So, all right, Fresh. At number 9 for me, I got the Texas A&M Aggies. This was difficult for me because I think this is where we do our rankings early in the summertime here. We kind of put people together. The more and more I dug into Texas A&M, the more I kind of said 9 might be a little on the high side for them. Not saying that I don't think they're a bad team. I think they're a very good team. Mike Elko is going to have this defense ready to play. Texas A&M has been a very good defensive team. Their schedule does help them. You don't have you have one really tough game away at LSU at the end of September, but even after that, you follow it up with Arkansas at Missouri, which is basically Fraudville, and then the Citadel, and then you get Alabama at the end of October there. It seems like this A&M schedule, you could go 6-2 to start the year. And a lot of people be like, "Oh, okay, A&M 6-2, and your losses are at LSU and at Alabama. That's not bad. Voters are not going to drop them." Really, it's going to come down to how well Marcel Reed matures as a quarterback. 2 years ago, Marcel Reed broke onto the scene. Both me and you were really, really high on the kid during that freshman year, redshirt freshman year. He was 2 years ago.
Yep.
he,
He was
he
young,
was
24.
he was electric. And all of a sudden we saw something there going, man, what is A&M going to be like? And he had a great year. They had a great year last year. They kind of like Texas Tech and laid a giant egg in the playoff, but they still have a great year. It's nothing to take away from them on that part. But then I started looking more and more into Marcel Reed. And I looked at what he did as a true freshman. He played a little bit. People forget that he played a little bit as a true freshman. And then his second sophomore or redshirt freshman year. And then he improved. But there's one area that bothered me that he didn't improve enough on. Everyone's going to point to his 25 from 15 to 25 touchdowns. But he threw 6 more interceptions. Okay, he had 130 more attempts, but his completion percentage never got better. And that's with adding Casey Concepcion, who is off to the NFL this year with the Cleveland Browns, and having a guy who is a true playmaker. Now, again, he was plagued by some drops. I'll give him that. But again, we always think that the marquee level, a good quarterback in college football is over 65%. An elite level quarterback in college football is 70%. Marcel Reed's got to hit that point. He's got to get a better with his accuracy. They can lean on his legs a little bit. They can lean on this rushing attack. You know, they still got Reuben Owens back there. They're high on some of these other guys as well. I know Owens had some injury issues too last season. They bring in Isaiah Horton, the senior transfer over there, to kind of hopefully replace Concepcion. Horton was pretty good at Alabama, but never like completely flourished. It's a bunch of guys that are, and I keep coming back to that word, they're good. And you talked about time, Fresh, one of the books you've read and used in your personal life, Good to Great. Where are the great players on Texas A&M? Who are the guys that are going to say, and I guess the best person ever used is our producer, Drew. Makai Lemon last year. Producer Drew watched a USC game, again, I think it was against Illinois, and he texted us in our group chat, who is this? Lemon, I think, wore number 1 last year. It's like, who's number 1 for USC? And it's like, Makai Lemon. And he's like, this kid, like, legitimately, you can see the difference. You can see that he's an NFL level wide receiver. He jumps off the screen. It's the same thing that happens at places like Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Notre Dame. The truly elite programs, they have the players that jump off the page. Where are those guys on Texas A&M? It's going to come down to Reed. If he improves, he could be one of them. If he doesn't, this is a mid-level team, 7-5, and in very much danger of moving to Fraudville this season.
I mean, it's a lot of unproven guys who can get going. But as I said in my previous item, in the 11 to 15 range, Marcel Reed has to be the leader of this team, and guys have got to get on the page early. And of all the guys who've been drafted off this team the past couple of years, it's that next layer. Boosting the rest of the guys in the offense, I think there's actually a bunch more talent in the offense this year than there's with defense. But they're going to have to show up every single day, week in and week out. And we've known in big games, they, as a group, they have not. So this is a major challenge for Elko and the A&M Aggies to put up or shut up in 2026.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the back half of their schedule at South Carolina, Tennessee, at Oklahoma, at home versus the Longhorns. What if they went 1-3 in those last 4 games? Like, people are thinking much higher about this team, so I'm waiting to be seen on this one. A&M, I'm going to stick with them at 9 right now, but I think I feel like I'm going to be eating some crow on that one come halfway point in the season. All right, Fresh, who you got number 8?
Number 8, very similar to your thought process where we do our rankings mid-June, late July, early July, late June. And start going through our records of our episodes here. And I have a very similar feeling with the Ole Miss Rebels. I have them at 8, but as I keep looking at them, like, maybe I had them a little too high. Lacey and Chambliss are great on the offensive side of the ball. The defense, I really did like what they brought in the secondary, going in, getting Jay Crawford, Sharif Denson from Auburn and Florida, respectively. Janelle Aguero and Edwin Joseph from Florida State in the safety spots, from Georgia and Florida State in the safety spots. So they've overhauled that secondary. Pete Golding's defenses, they've been good. And then some other times they do, tempt themselves with being great. You got Centaria Perkins there at linebacker and a couple other transfers coming in. Where's the edge rush really going to come from? Is actually, you more look at the roster, like who's going to be that big impact player and generate that pass rush for them. They have the linebackers, they have the secondary. Where's that, that in the trenches on the defense side of the ball? Who's going to step up and take that next step like they had last year? One thing when you did your description of them and your ranking, it kind of caught my attention. It got me even more thinking the edge they played with down the stretch last year because of the whole Lane Kiffin drama. How much of that carries them through? I think it gets them through the game versus LSU in Oxford. If they win or lose, do they let that win be their entire season? Or if they lose, they let that just spiral out of control? Where's the mental, stability of this football team? Because at that point going into the playoff, if they got in, they were playing with house money. If they didn't, they had someone to blame. So where's this motivation you come from? How can Pete Golding, look, they came out there and they played great. They beat the Dogs in the Sugar Bowl, and then they gave Miami all they could handle in the playoffs. Where will this team's mentality be? Well, I think the X's and O's part, they'll be okay. But where's this mentality between the ears locked in? If they can get this squad squared away, ready to rock and roll, they'll be fine. I think the Louisville game being week 1 does grab their attention and makes them focus. If it was a slappy state, or Southwest wannabe wherever, it could have been a cakewalk, and their eyes would have been somewhere else. Playing Louisville in a very respectable football program, and Coach Brom's done there, is going to have them locked in and ready to play. 44 new transfers, it's not going to be the full same Ole Miss team. That's the one reason why I kind of have them where I do, is that they brought in so many talented transfers. It's not the guys who just left. It's not the same mentality. There's going to be guys that are like, I wasn't even here on this team last year. I'm ready to perform and take my game to the next level and play at a high spot. So we'll see. There's a lot of back-end loaded schedule this year for these teams that are really going to test them. So when you look at, man, they're ranked so-and-so in September or early October, wait until the full schedule plays out, because Ole Miss here got at Texas on October 24th, Auburn on Halloween, hosting Georgia on November 7th, and then at Oklahoma on November 14th. That 4-game stretch later in the season is going to really define it. The game versus LSU will not define the Ole Miss Rebs. It shouldn't, at least on paper. It may be mentally it will. But the games that they have to keep playing, you got to keep fighting. And how they do in that 4-game stretch of Texas, Auburn, Georgia, Oklahoma will truly tell if Pete Golding has the team in the right spot, and if it's a flash in the pan last year, or this will be a third straight year of very, very solid football from Ole Miss. Because if we look back, the 24 year, they were arguably up for that last spot in the playoff, and they didn't get in. They got in 25, and they made the work of it. Can they get 3 straight years of being on that cusp or in that playoff conversation? But we'll find out. But I think the talent on paper for this Ole Miss Red team is good. And if they can show up and take out Louisville and LSU, the Trinidad Chambliss, story could already start being written there by Disney Plus.
Yeah, we'll see. I gotta see Ole Miss carry that swagger with them, and I think you said they're going to be fine through the first couple weeks of the season. It's what's going to happen after that LSU game. All comes down to that. All right, Fresh, my number 18 is the Oklahoma Sooners here. I have them a little higher than you do. Here's my thoughts on Oklahoma. Brett Venables, we questioned whether or not he was supposed to be a head coach last year. We talked about, was this guy one of those guys who is a great coordinator and you just bit off a little more than you can chew, dude. Like, you went from being the DC at Clemson. It would have been great if you would have went to like the head coach at Virginia Tech, or you would have gone to Nebraska or Florida State or UCLA. Like, you would have maybe like worked your way up, but you went from the frying pan into the fire from being the DC at Clemson to being the head coach at Oklahoma. And he struggled. And I think because of Lincoln Riley leaving Oklahoma the way he left him, I don't think anyone realized, except for maybe like a diehard Oklahoma fan, realized how bare the cupboard was at Oklahoma. Like, he took the salt shakers, he took the pepper, he took the paprika. I mean, who takes paprika with it? You? Come on. Well, you do? Oh, okay. You probably use paprika. I like paprika quite a bit. But I think we kind of expected Venables to just fix it immediately, and it took time. And it took a long time to get the players that he wanted to get in, to get them coached up, to get the system in place. You take a look at the guys that are on the team right now. You're taking a look at a lot of juniors, a lot of red shirts, a lot of seniors on this team. It's a very, very experienced football team that they have. Guys that have been in his system as well. I love using the website Our Lads because it shows like different depth charts and for the NFL and for college football. The thing is, if you take a look at the Oklahoma one, the projected starting defense, the 11, none of them are transfers this year. It's all returning players. That's huge for Oklahoma. It's going to come down to John Mateer. Can you stay healthy? Can you perform the way you did? You brought Terrell Harrison on the offense side. Dr. Livingston, I presume. Parker over there. This guy looks like he should be off of a Sherlock Holmes novel. Take a look at the guy. And the fact that he was at Texas last year and he transferred to Oklahoma is pretty funny to me as well. He transferred to a rival school, so someone must have really ticked him off over there at Texas. But for me, Oklahoma is going to come down to really, I would say 3 games for me. And we will know what Oklahoma is by the halfway point of October. Go to Ann Arbor week 2. Already talked about that. But this is the first time they're going to Sanford Stadium in Athens, Georgia, since being a member of the SEC. I honestly think if the over is more than 30 points in that game, take the under. Take the under, because that is going to be, if you like good, hard-hitting defensive football, that may be one of the best played defensive games that we will see all season long. I cannot wait for September 26th. That is must-see TV. Bulldogs, Sooners, sign me up for it, because I think back to all of the classic games, the playoff with Georgia coming back against Baker Mayfield, I think, Rose Bowl? If that's the Rose Bowl?
Yep. It's Rose
Where
Bowl.
they came back in overtime. Yep. This is going to be an instant classic type game. They get the week off after that. You got Red River, the second Saturday in October there. Those 3 games early in the season, Oklahoma's got to come out of that 2-1. They got to come out of that 2-1. That would put them at 5-1 at the part of the season. Then the schedule gets a little easier. Kentucky, Mississippi State, South Carolina. You go in the swamp, Ole Miss, A&M, Mizzou. I don't want to say it's a cakewalk, but I do feel very confident about Oklahoma in that realm. But those first 6 weeks of the season, we're going to learn a lot about this Oklahoma Sooners team. I'm going to say, Venables, you gave me something to believe in. Now you beat Alabama. If he gets if they can go into Athens and pull off the upset against Georgia, and I'm not saying that they will, but I'm saying if that happens, then I'll come on here the very next day and go, Venables, I was dead wrong about you. My apologies, sir.
Yeah, I mean, like you heard my preview, they have a very, very good football team. They return tons of talent, more on the defensive side, like you mentioned. My biggest question is John Mateer. Can he stay healthy and play at a high level? Because he put up all the stats at Washington State versus maybe some lesser defenses, and then last year was beat up down the stretch. So if he's healthy and Steve can play at a high level, that makes him very well balanced. But that game in Athens is going to truly tell the story. They might go up to and win in Michigan, or they might lose in Michigan, but it's really their season will be defined by coming to Athens and then following up 2 weeks later versus Texas.
Do you think they'd be more dangerous if they lose in Ann Arbor? Like, would they feel like, shoot, our playoff chances are like hanging? Like, if they go into Ann Arbor, let's say they lose by 7, and then 2 weeks later, like if they go into Athens and the Bulldogs boat race, unfortunately, as much as you say, like, this is a good football team, they have to go perfect the rest of the way and then look good going perfect too.
Yeah, you're going to have to. You have ranked winning versus name, blue bloods versus, logo. It's a logo game, and you got to be able to show. It's not like well, they were ranked that week, and they're like, that's okay, great. Houston was ranked, or Arkansas was ranked, which that maybe
future playoff team Houston.
But like you look at a legit like Michigan, Georgia, Texas. You start seeing teams, you start seeing logos. You're like, okay, that's a quality win. That's that's more than a quality win. That's a major statement. Those ring more true. But if you lose those games, they're kind of like, well, they had their opportunities. At what point do we give up playoffs? Well, they had their chance and they stumbled their toe. Why we can't? I think you can't reward losses. And the committee already said they care about wins and losses. So if you lose ball games, and you lose ball games, everyone's watching. People, they saw it happen. It didn't just, it's not like Notre Dame losing to Northern Illinois or the tourists forget that ever happened. It's people remember.
Yeah, and it's not like take a look at Texas last year. I know Sark wants to say, well, we lost to Ohio State. That is the reason that it kept us out of the playoff. No, that's not the reason you were kept out of the playoff. The reason you were kept out of the playoff is because you lost to a terrible Florida team, and then you barely beat Kentucky a couple weeks later, and then got boat raced by Georgia. That's what kept you out of the playoff. Not that you scheduled Ohio State week 1 and lost. Come on, man.
Yeah, probably nothing to do with it.
All right, Press, who you got number 7?
The reigning national champion, Indiana Hoosiers. I had to say it again to make sure that's actually you believe it.
That's pretty
This
cool.
team, Nick Marsh at receiver. It's interesting now to see with the two receivers, Cooper Jr. and with Surratt, that camaraderie they had and that gel they had with Mendoza. How does Nick Marsh make that up? A very talented player at Michigan State, but now the expectations he needs to deliver 10 plus touchdowns this year. Hoover at quarterback. He has been a good quarterback at TCU. He has to deliver now with the spotlight. You're replacing Fernando Mendoza, guy who won the Heisman Trophy, number 1 overall pick and won Natty. You've got to have to almost play flawless. The defense has a couple returning guys, especially Tucker and Hardy. This team, you're living up to expectations now. And the reason why I say it, there's tons of talent on this roster, whether it's been the past couple of years or going out the transfer portal and spending that NIL money to bring them in. But you look at 2024 when Cignetti arrived. Nobody really gave them any time of day. But they were 0-1 in the regular season versus top 25 opponent. That was the loss to Ohio State. They survived Michigan that year and then lost to Notre Dame. They're 0-2 overall versus top 25 opponents. They made a jump. Yes, they made the playoff. They lost to Notre Dame. They lost to Ohio State. That team last year made a jump. There was a lot of super seniors, a lot of veteran guys coming back who were locked in. They went 2-0 the regular season versus top 25. They went 6-0 overall with the 4 in the playoff that ran down the stretch. Which team are we going to get in 2026? Are we going to get the team that you beat up on bad teams when it mattered against the legit ones? You didn't have the firepower or the moxie or the veteran leadership. Or are we going to have the team that was just steamrolling people last year? Alabama. You also have a tougher schedule. You have Ohio State, Washington, USC, maybe Michigan will be ranked when you play. You have 4 top 25 teams at least right off the bat in your schedule in your regular season. This is even the first thing that Kurt Cinetti has not had to deal with. The playoffs is one thing where you have momentum, you have fire, you've been rested, you're ready to finish it now. Now, how do you navigate that regular season? This is not October 17th and November 21st. This is the schedule where in the past, Indiana, the past years haven't had to deal with it. You got Ohio State at Michigan, Minnesota, USC, and then at Washington. If this team can really want to showcase that they have not just a 1 or 2 year blip on the radar and the back to whatever, this is now the true test for Kurt Cinetti. It was a daunting task to win national championship in Indiana. But now everyone wants you to sustain that success. You did the unthinkable. And I'm giving you all the praise in the world. You did the unthinkable going into Bloomington and winning an Natty in 2 years. But now, the world we're in now, and anything, you have to sustain that. What can you do to even bring that same level? So the talent's there. Can Kurt Cinetti, can you actually coach that? This is actually it's not coaching the players on game day. It's not giving the little eye looks and getting on camera. It's keep the team hungry. Who on that team has a Natty and who wants one? Because the returning guys, they all have that ring. They've been part of the historic success. Who wants to write their own chapter? And that's where we have to go for down the road. I think this team is very talented there in Bloomington, but can Kurt Cinetti get Hoover, get Marsh, get all these other guys who are still to maintain that mentality of this is now the standard. 2 losses is unacceptable. 3 losses is abominable. You need to be undefeated. You need to be perfect in everything you do. To quote, remember the Titans, we'll be perfect in every aspect of the game. That's what Kurt Cinetti needs to instill in this football team because what happened last year is what happened last year. You have the talent now. Now you have to build all that and sustain it. But I think Indiana's in a good spot. But having a tougher schedule is going to keep their attention. They're not going to get lazy. They might actually finish the regular season with 2 losses, but a 10-2 football team still could be a playoff team. It just depends on who those losses are at. And actually, it might keep them fueled for the stretch run. But I have a lot of confidence in the Hoosiers coming in 2026.
Yeah, Fresh, I'll get to Hoosiers here shortly. I got the Miami Hurricanes, their opponent in the national title game, as my number 7 team. All right, so let me just call it a spade here. I know everyone's going to sit there, and with what Mario Cristobal has done with the Hurricanes, we thought, I think last year, we put him on our hot seat early on. Like, if he didn't win last year, we thought he was gone.
And he lost some bait. He lost some clunkers.
Right. And you see what they've had And he bought himself some time. I think we could probably hit the rewind button, and everything you said about Indiana, we kind of could say about Miami and Mario Cristobal. We thought your goose was cooked. Actually, I kind of feel like I'm talking about Oklahoma again a little bit. And then you got Carson Beck cast off from Georgia, whether it was by choice or his following Instagram models or whatever they do. And all of a sudden, Sid from Ice Age leads you all the way to the national title game. Great job out of that kid. But it helps when you have Malachi Tony, one of the fastest people in there. It helps when you have Mark Fletcher Jr. You bring in Darian Menza from Duke. And this kid was really, really strong for Duke. And there's a lot of games where he won that game for Duke last year. 34 touchdowns playing for the Blue Devils, completing almost 67% of his passes and almost threw for 4,000 yards while he was with the Duke Blue Devils. Like, that's insane numbers. And now you give him some more weapons. I'm like 94% of the way there on the Miami Hurricanes. There's 6% of me, though, that wants to sit and like, well, wait, hold on a second. Because how are you going to replace what you had on the defensive front? I know everyone's going to want to talk about the offense. They're going to want to talk about the speed that they have there. And yes, Miami may be very difficult to beat because they're going to put you into games that are like 56 to 42, 45. But what happens when someone can match you with that? Do you guys have the guys that can clog? You don't have Reuben Bain Jr. anymore. You don't have Mansour anymore. You don't have those guys that made it very, very difficult to run the football against. Is Marquise Lightfoot, is Justin Scott, Moton, the transfer Wilson, are those going to be the guys that are going to be able to stuff the run like they were last year? You bring back some linebackers here. The questions for me are on defense. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt because of the offense here. Miami, and again, you take a look at the schedule. They don't they got to travel week 1 all the way to California to play Stanford. For some reason, Stanford's always giving Miami fits. I don't know why. They just do. Then they got a couple of games here against some slappies, although watch out for those Chippewas coming down to Miami Gardens. Central Michigan might have something to say for them. Never mess with a Chippewa. And then you go to Clemson, week off Florida State. It's really going to be that November 7th game against Notre Dame. I don't think they'll call it Catholics versus convicts anymore, but we get the history of that game, which is really, really something. And Notre Dame is going to be a very, very good football team this year, as much as people are going to hate on them for last year. But Miami, there's just one thing that just, I don't have the full confidence on them just yet.
When you kind of look at, you mentioned Mensa, ironically led Duke to the ACC title last year.
Right.
Miami still has yet to actually win an ACC championship since they joined the ACC. This Miami team has got to embrace the swagger like last year's team and like the U of lore. If they do, they play at a high level. The schedule rolls out very nicely for them, but you got to look back. They didn't win the ACC. They didn't even play for the title, and they didn't win a natty. You won a couple bowl trophies, but in the end, you didn't have a true championship at a conference level or a national level. It hasn't had a hollow feeling. So what else do you have? Where can you take that next step? Where's that next gear? I'll save my full breakdown on the Hurricanes, but I have them higher up. But can Cristobal get out of his own way and not prevent this team from falling back? Because it seems like you got them there. You can't take the step back. You can't have it going for it on 4th down, when you should be punting or taking a knee or whatever. And, the stupid mistakes that you leave that just Hurricanes fumble away wins. That has got to leave, and you've got to let the guys play at a high level. If not, it'll be a one-year wonder in 25 when we'll be asking what if.
All right, Presh, number 6.
Well, you mentioned Catholics versus convicts. We're going to go on the other side. We're going to go number 6, Notre Dame, the Catholic version of that combination, that game, that rivalry. I will 100% say this team quit last year and didn't play in the Pop-Tart Bowl. That was a terrible look. It was an embarrassment. That's for being Notre Dame, being a staple of college sports and being about integrity. And yes, you can see the other sides like, well, their integrity is for them to opt out. The integrity is to develop man and play through and play the game. Our winners and losers in life with it. And now, conveniently, Notre Dame has a buy-in in every single playoff schedule where we'll contract that they're automatically guaranteed a spot if they meet a very, very minimal criteria.
Right.
This team is talented enough to meet that criteria on their own without gifts. CJ Carr, at quarterback, really showed a lot of growth last year. You saw as the season progressed. I think if they had played Miami later in the year and not week one, Notre Dame wins that game. And that game actually decided Miami State getting into the playoff, in my opinion. If they didn't beat Notre Dame and didn't play for an ACC title, it's a very tough ask to put them in the playoff. So you got a quarterback who wasn't up to snuff. How does he build off that year? How does Leonard Moore lead that defense and get them at a high level? Does the team use that we got shafted, doubted, whatever adjective you want to put in 2025 as the carrot, the motivation, the funding of the energy, the discipline, the focus every single Saturday to go out there and win and quote unquote play like a champion? If it does, it works out perfectly. The psyop is great. Notre Dame is fantastic. The talent always plays up, to the high level. But the first loss comes. We talked about it earlier. How does the media react? That first loss comes. People start asking questions about Marcus Freeman. Did you instill the right mentality of this football team by letting them quit and opting out? You basically showed them that not playing and walking away and taking your ball and going home is an acceptable attitude. One loss becomes two becomes three. The team spirals out of control. There's too much talent on this roster to be in that position, but you've now created that opportunity for that negativity to seep into the program. We're going to know early on because this Wisconsin football team under Luke Fickell in week one out there in Lambeau Field, they have nothing to lose. Luke Fickell's job's in the line. I expect that Wisconsin team to give Notre Dame a lot to fight for. So who's going to show up for Notre Dame and put that down and put the Badgers and put Luke Fickell there to an end and come out there and make a statement and say, we have not gone anywhere. We are still the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, and we will play anybody, anywhere, anytime. That first game right there, Marcus Freeman and that entire Notre Dame team have got to come out and make a statement. If they have a slow start with Wisconsin, it's going to seep in. You got BYU on October 17th. You got Miami on November 7th, SMU on November 21st. It's a 4-game season. Nobody really cares about what Notre Dame does the rest of the way. Granted, there's, quality programs, Navy, fantastic program, blah, 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 whatever. Those 4 games are going to determine the Notre Dame football team. If you can show up and take care of business versus SMU, which is a very quality football team, Miami, we've already talked about. BYU is a contender in the Big 12 and for a national scale. And then the opener versus Wisconsin is going to be very heated, very emotional, Lambeau Field. If you can show up and get it done, I think that might lessen some of the blow that we saw last year in the way it ended. But you've got to make it certain, and you've got to do it with a force unknown to mankind. This talent is too good at Notre Dame that you can't let that mentality seep in that you guys aren't good enough or you're elitist enough that everyone's just bow down to you. You need to go up and take it with force. We have seen too many times Notre Dame get beat by a lesser opponent because they think that they're too good. You can't have that anymore, especially this season. You have got to go out and dominate your arena. This team has the talent. They've got to get done. Carr, you've got to play at a high level. 9-3 is very easy. 10-2 is probably going to get you in the playoff. 9-3 is going to depend on how that 3 comes out. But you've got to be perfect in everything you do. Maximize your talent and get the job done. The playoffs will sort it out. You can make your case there. You're 2 years removed from playing for a national championship. You have to get back there because you went from playing for a national championship to opting out of a bowl. There's no in between. This is the deciding factor for Marcus Freeman in your era at Notre Dame. You've got to keep this team locked in and focused and maximize the talent and get the job done. I have faith in this Notre Dame football team. I think they're going to rally around what happened, and they're going to use that as motivation all year.
Pressure. I'll go a little more in Notre Dame when I get to them myself. I got them a little higher than you do. I think it's going to come down to one position only, see how well that they can replace some very good NFL talent. There's some other things that is looking really, really nice for them, but you said it right there. I think it's going to get real interesting to see how Notre Dame builds on the idea that we skipped our bowl practices and we skipped the Pop-Tart Bowl just because we got our feelings hurt and we decided to take our ball and go home. I'm sorry, but yeah, it doesn't really jive for me. As much goodwill as you built up with me with, I like Marcus Freeman as a coach. I think he's a great coach. I just think that was a bad call. I think it was the wrong call. So that's just me. But all right, my number 16 is the Indiana Hoosiers. I'm with you here, Fresh. It's so cool in my eyes to say the reigning national champion Indiana Hoosiers. Like no one can take that away from you. And that's what's special about winning a natty, especially in the 12-team playoff era. It's not like you popped one great year back in the BCS there. I remember 2007 at one point, we were going to get a national title game of Missouri versus West Virginia if everything held true. And it's not like that where you got lucky for one game and you won it. Like you went on a run through the playoff. You won the Big Ten. You did everything you were supposed to do. Great job out of you guys. You touched on Nick Marsh. It's a huge transfer for Indiana. He was the number 3 wide receiver in his class that junior year, only behind Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams down there at Alabama here. This Marsh kid is really, really good. Not enough people saw him over at Michigan State. I think people will look at it and go, well, if you're so good, why is the stat line kind of pedestrian? I think that's more a statement about quarterback play and not so much about his talent as well. The Josh Hoover pickup is bigger than people will think. Josh Hoover, 7,000 yards at TCU the last 2 years. And it's not like that kid was playing behind a strong offensive line or had like 5-star wide receivers all around him. He had some good players at TCU. Don't get me wrong. It's just, man, he's going to be playing with some better players here, especially a more veteran offensive line. They'll be able to protect him. They're only replacing one kid, and that's a senior transfer over there at right guard. It's going to come down to defense, and can they manage the schedule? You said it best, Fresh. Indiana, 2 years ago, they had a light schedule. They lost their one marquee game. They played Notre Dame, but that I kind of wonder if they don't have that taste, if they don't get into the playoff and get beat up by Notre Dame, do they really go, this is what it takes to win a national title? And everyone comes back, works harder as well. I think they know what it takes, makes for them a very scary team. But when you're going Buckeyes, Wolverines, ending the season, USC, the Huskies, I'm circling November 21st in Seattle, Washington as the one game that maybe is really a trap game for them. They're going to play USC the week before. USC is going to give them everything they got because USC is going to need that marquee win for them. Lincoln Riley may need that marquee win at that point. And then I think you're going to have an emotional letdown game going into Seattle, Washington. Going to have to travel across the country there. I'm probably pretty confident that game is going to be, that might be the CBS 3:30 game. Maybe it's the 8 o'clock Fox game. That could be a tough one for Indiana. That's the one I think if I was a Hoosier fan, that would be the one that would give me the most amount of pause. But Kurt Cignetti has earned it, and now you got to establish it. Fresh, you talked about LSU earlier in this here. LSU in 2019 won a national title with arguably one of the greatest football teams in college football history. Indiana is the first team to go, they go 15-0 last year, 16-0, whatever it was.
15, 14, 16.
16-0.
They had 3 playoff wins. They won the Big Ten title game and had, 16-0 for my knowledge.
16-0. First team ever to do that. And then all of a sudden, LSU fires head Orgeron a couple years later. Auburn wins the national title with Cam Newton. Auburn's been a joke ever since the playoff era started. Are you a team that flashes and we're there and we will always remember the Indiana national title? We will reminisce about, oh man, do you remember when Indiana went 16-0, ran through everyone? Cignetti came in, he had done it within 2 years. Great job out of him. But then they got, fat and happy and you kind of let everything fall by the wayside. If you make and I'm going to set the bar lower than people will probably think. Everyone's going to say, well, we're Indiana now. We got to repeat as national champions. That's not the standard. That's not the standard for you. Making the playoff, that's the standard here. As long as Indiana makes the playoff, you've set the expectation that we're a playoff team. And again, once you hit the playoffs, you're going up against the 12 best teams in college football, arguably. And at this point now, you're facing the best of the best in the country. The ball might not bounce your way. Sometimes it just doesn't. Sometimes you just have a bad day and people are like, oh, well, you lost in the second round of the playoffs. Shoot, you're Indiana. 3 years ago, you didn't even think about making the playoff. And now this is our level. Right. Sometimes you win them, sometimes you lose them. It happens. It's game football. Weird shaped ball bounces weird ways. So Indiana, to me, I think it's great. I think there's still going to be a great story. I can't wait for them to get into the meat of the schedule, though.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how they navigate a schedule with a lot of quality opponents compared to the past. Like the playoff, that's one thing that's great. You had a lot of time off in between some of those games. Here, how Kurt Signetti has his team and how this team is motivated. It'll be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah. All right, Fresh. That's our 10 through 6 there. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is our composite ranking where Fresh and I, we take an average and our tiebreakers were by our producer, Drew. Our composite ranking, number 10 was the Texas A&M Aggies. Oklahoma was number 9. LSU, number 8. Indiana was number 7. And the Miami Hurricanes coming in at number 6. We're into our top 5 here, Fresh. These are the best of the best. All 5 of these teams, in my eyes, can win a national title and have the pieces to do it. I'm excited to get to it here because, Fresh, that also means college football season is right around the corner.
Yep. We'll get to our top 5. Media days are wrapping up. Camps have been open up here very, very soon as we go from July to August. Hit up spinnablesports.com. Our producer, Drew, has a ton of great new content, especially a whole section around sports betting, tracking bets, giving advice, other great stories. He completely also did a revitalization of the entire, website. So give it up, spinnablesports.com. Also at Spinnable on Twitter/X. But the most important part, you can find the Irrational Confidence podcast and the Power Alley podcast on Spinnable Sports YouTube channel. Subscribe to it. Tell everybody about it. Tell your friends. Hit us up on social as well if we get more engaged with football. Baseball season trade deadlines coming through. Get some reaction on the trade deadlines that come through at Power Alley Podcast. You can find at Power Alley Pod on Twitter/X. But the most important is our flagship here between Seth and I, the Irrational Confidence Podcast on Twitter/X at IR Confidence Pod. Hit us up. Hit up SpinnableSports.com. Seth, it's football time. I mean, I know you have the Browns to deal with. You have the Browns you have to deal with on Sundays, but college football always keeps you happy.
Yeah, I know. I can't wait for Saturdays are for when I feel joy in my life, and Sundays are when I just shake my head and feel some misery. And I'll do it all over again this season.
It's literally, I think someone said, like, being a Buckeye and being a Browns fan is like night and day. Like, it goes from great to not so great very quickly once that it switches from 11:59 to midnight.
Right.
The pumpkin becomes the pumpkin.
It really will. And we're going to see, always the fun thing is how many sweep of a weekend do we have? Like, how many times does Ohio State and the Browns win in a single weekend? We'll see how many I get this year. Not many.
Maybe 2.
Maybe 2. That seems about right. All right, folks, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell. We got a bunch more. Special thanks to our producer, Drew. Without him, none of this is possible. That's all I got for tonight here, Fresh. It's been a long one, but it's been a fun one.
Been a fun one. Everybody tune in next time for 5 through 1. And from there, we'll take you the rest of the way through the college football season. Talk to y'all later. Bye, y'all.